Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the King and Pocket Aces Show. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Aniano, and joining me as he does each and every week, my good friend and colleague, the king of fantasy sports, Scott Engel. Scott, it's been a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back. We're ready to go through the summer, and we're ready to prepare everybody for their fantasy football season. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good. It's good to be back. It's good to see you. I'm ready to talk some fantasy football as we I don't know if change gears is the word because that's kind of NASCAR-ish as we break a new huddle.
Yeah,
You have to be careful what cliches you use.
I like break a new huddle. I like that. Yeah, going forward, everybody, primary focus will be on fantasy football. The summer months are here. That's when we do this. We get ready for our draft days. Whether we're doing best ball drafts right around now, we're getting ready for our redraft or dynasty drafts, whatever format you do. And guys, don't forget, head over to RotoBaller.com and sign up right now for the premium packages there using the promo code KING or ACES. Save yourself a little bit of money and get that NFL package. Or if you're looking for baseball, NASCAR, basketball, MMA, esports, sports betting, PGA, whatever you're looking for, RotoBaller.com has it all for you, DFS or season-long formats. Use that promo code, sign up, save some money, and win your fantasy leagues. Right, Scott? It's pretty much that simple.
Yeah, in rotoballer.com/betting, you can take a look at some futures too, et cetera, over under win totals, et cetera, which I'm all monitoring right now. I'm starting to Detroit Lions under 6. The Jets probably take the under. Probably take the under over on the Dolphins when I'm looking at futures. I think Miami's going to be really good this year.
Yeah, I agree with you actually on that. I like Miami. I think Miami not necessarily going to take the division from Buffalo, but anything less than a 10-win wild card type season, I think it'd be a disappointment. But Scott, let's get right into it because it's been a while, and I purposely haven't asked you about this in our casual conversations because I really am curious what you think of the Julio Jones trade and the fallout. And I wanted it to be, first time I hear it, to be right here on this show. So let's first break this down from a Titan perspective and how you now view the key pieces in Tennessee from a fantasy viewpoint. Tannehill, Henry.
Yeah. I had a new article
and AJ Brown.
RotoBaller.com about hot takes and some of my opposing views. And I got into an interesting Twitter discussion with two people I really respect, Mike Salfino of The Athletic, Mike Taglieri of Fantasy Pros, and they both had different viewpoints. Mike Salfino has done some really interesting studies on how bigger receivers break down sooner than your average wideout. But then Mike Taglieri does studies about how star receivers really don't fall off until age 34. I meet somewhere in the middle with that, with Julio Jones. You look at him on film last year, still had 2 137-yard games. Not quite as fast as he used to be, as some NFL insiders point out. But when he's on the field, he can still make a big impact. He can command a ton of defensive attention. I'm in the middle between Mike Salfino and Mike Taglieri. I feel like Julio is not quite done, but I think he'll be more of an injury risk than he was earlier in his career. As there were times when he did suffer injuries earlier in his career. So where am I ranking Julio right now? When my seasonal ranks come out, you'll see he's not in my top 25 in the RotoBaller fantasy football package, the season pass. Enter King, check out for special discount. Like you said, he's not my top 25 in any of those because receiver is deep. And I still like him, but I don't know if I can rely on him to be on the field. He's no longer top 15, top 20 to me, but I still like him a lot just outside that top 25.
So you're drafting him. Hold on one second, Scott. So Julio Jones, in your eyes, if he's outside the top 25 in a 12-team league, he is now, in your opinion, a wide receiver 3.
Exactly. He's not a wide receiver 1. When he's on the field, he can put up wide receiver 2 numbers, but I don't know. He'll always be on the field. So I'm bumping him down to wide receiver 3.
So
let me Tyler Lockett, Odell Beckham sort of range.
So although now I'm going to play devil's advocate here with you, Scott. From 2014 to 2019, he essentially played every week. There was a 14-game season, a 15-game season, but essentially he was out there week in and week out. He was never less than 129 targets. He was never less than almost 1,400 yards, 1,394, just 2 years ago. So one season, which was injury plagued, that he tried to play through, and maybe that was the mistake. If you remember, he kept trying to go out there and play through the injury, and he just wasn't effective at times. But even with just 9 games, still averaged 15.1 yards per reception, his highest since 2017. Okay? Still higher than his 18 and his 19, and in 2018, he had almost 1,700 receiving yards. One injury-plagued season, and we're now, I don't want to say dismissing him, but dropping him from what was a perennial wide receiver 1 down to a wide receiver 3. So my question for you is it because of the fear of injury that he's dropped? To me, it's a big drop from a wide receiver 1 to a 3. Is it because of that 1 year, last year of being banged up? Or is it because of the change from Atlanta to Tennessee? Or is it a combination of both that you now have him sitting outside the top 25?
It is a combination of both, my friend. You are right. If I knew he wasn't a health risk, he'd be a wide receiver 2. But he's also going to an offense that's probably going to gun it a lot less. They have a much stronger running game. He's not the number 1 target in the offense like he used to be. But a team he's coming from where they used to throw a lot, where you had that established rapport with Matt Ryan. This is a team that had Derrick Henry. Atlanta has never had anything like that. You have A.J. Brown, I guess you could say, kind of like Calvin Ridley there. I'm not of this, it's just one season. We did see him get banged up at times throughout his career as well. And he's gotten to the point where he hardly practices. So it's obvious he's starting to wear down a little bit. We can't just say it's 1 year, look at everything before that, because, he's not 28, 29 years old anymore, which is not old for a wide receiver. He's not at the end of the line. He's certainly not young. He's gotten a little long in years, so you got to drop him a little bit. If I knew I could rely on him health-wise, it would be a drop from a wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 2. Last year, he was a high-end wide receiver 2 to me. If I knew he would stay healthy, he'd go to a mid-range wide receiver 2. Now I have him as a wide receiver 3.
Interesting. Now, what is your view now on A.J. Brown, who some people had put into the wide receiver 1, that top 12 class? And you said it. And I talked to Josh Hayes about this on SiriusXM the other morning. The wide receiver class is super deep, right? I mean, you can make arguments.
That's why he gets bumped down to 3, not because I'm saying I'm docking him. There's just a lot of guys I'd rather have.
Right. And you ask 12 people, they'd have a different top 12 of the wide receiver class this year. And nobody would be wrong. The arguments would probably all be valid. But that being said, some people, and you mentioned Paul and Mike, and I've seen other people on Twitter and other people on RotoBaller who have said this is a big blow to A.J. Brown's fantasy value. He's not going to be the alpha in Tennessee. He's going to now share those receptions with Julio Jones. Others have said there have been young wide receivers who have played with other elite level wide receivers, and it hasn't made much of an impact. So how has this trade caused you to adjust A.J. Brown's value coming into draft season?
It really doesn't. For people who said that he was going to be a top 5 wide receiver, which I wasn't there on that, I think that dings him. But I had him just inside my top 10, and I think he stays there because I think the presence of Julio when he plays is going to command a lot of defensive attention on the other side that Corey Davis just could not. So that's going to help him. Last year, we saw the receiving yards well over 1,000 and the touchdowns 11. Julio's never been a major touchdown threat. I think that has to do with Matt Ryan's style of not throwing the jump ball. And I was talking with Josh Hayes on RotoBaller Radio on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio and said he can see Julio putting about the same numbers as Corey Davis did last year. I said, I'll add a touchdown or two. To me, it puts Brown about the same range of what he did for last year, whereas others were seeing him getting bumped up even more on the board and challenging for a top 5, top 3 spot. I never saw that in the first place, so I'm not docking it.
See, the problem with A.J. Brown and why I agree with you can't put him in the top 3 or the top 5. He's never been in his first 2 years the high-volume reception guy, right? He's not been in that Julio Jones level where he's 100 receptions, right? He's topped out last year at only 70, although the touchdown action has been high. He's got 19 combined touchdowns over 2 seasons, and he hasn't had that elite level of amount of receiving yards. He hasn't put up that 1,100-1,400-yard season.
He's been a great number 2 fantasy wide receiver.
Yes. See, and I'm with you. He hasn't even cracked 1,100 yards. Ton of touchdowns. But here's my question. I do think the touchdowns remain for A.J. Brown. But I don't think we can see a huge spike in receptions or a huge spike in yardage now that there's a better wide receiver 2 opposite him in Julio Jones.
I would say minor spike because if Julio misses any time, that could mean more volume for A.J. Brown, but that would make Josh Reynolds more of a deep sleeper play because I had him actually as a sleeper before this trade. But I think what you're talking about speaks a lot of what I talk about in my new article on rotoballer.com, where I talk about hot takes and hot topics, and I have opposing views. People love to take their upside guys and push them sometimes too high up the board. And it's not just about opportunity and talent. You got to remember, look, I respect Frank Amarante of rotoballer.com.
Frank loves a hot take. He loves a hot take,
He loves
Scott.
a hot take. If he's right, I'll say he's right. He's right. But he's saying Jonathan Taylor, number 1 overall. I just can't buy into that. If there's a healthy Christian McCaffrey, people like Frank will say, well, he can get better in receptions. Well, you're hoping he is. What makes you think he'll get anywhere near McCaffrey in terms of catches if McCaffrey stays healthy? So
I give Frank a lot of credit. He puts himself out there.
People look at talent. People look at upside, and they vaulted up too much up the board sometimes. And I think that's maybe what happens with A.J. Brown sometimes.
Scott, 2 other key pieces here in Tennessee. Derrick Henry, obviously. And, I love Derrick Henry as a top 5 overall pick. I mean, what he's done the last 2 years are astronomical. Am I crazy? Now, I understand last season's numbers might be impossible to repeat, right? Over 2,000 rushing yards, 17 rushing touchdowns. I mean, just ridiculous numbers. A lot of people thought his 2019 with over 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns was not matchable. And he blew those numbers out of the water on 75 more carries. So here's the question. I'm not worried about Derrick Henry getting hurt. I'm not. Derrick Henry plays the game to hurt people. He's an offensive lineman running the ball. I mean, he's just a monster. But does this addition of Julio Jones actually open up the running game more for Derrick Henry? That the threat of Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill, and we'll talk about Tannehill in a minute, the threat of Brown and Julio Jones force defenses not to play 8 in the box, which I believe the number was they played it about 28% of the time last year against Derrick Henry. Do they have to now scheme differently just out of respect for the combination of Julio and AJ and potentially open, crazy as it sounds, open things up even more for Derrick Henry?
Yeah, it's just that's ideal analysis. It just changes the way Derrick Henry will get his fantasy numbers. He might not get on volume or et cetera, but this offense will be even more crisp. We'll get to finish off a lot of scoring drives. There'll be a lot of more open running lanes for big runs. So he's still going to get somewhere close to what he did 2 years ago. He might not quite hit that high level, but, you still like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, to me, listen, if I could get Derrick Henry in the top 5 of a draft, I'm doing it. I'm not worried about – people are going to say he doesn't catch enough passes. People are going to say, oh, he's got so many carries, he's due for a breakdown. I'll roll the dice on that. Derrick Henry is in my
Derrick
opinion.
Henry or Austin Eckler for you?
Oh, Derrick Henry, 100 out of 100 times. Not even something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, you talk to some other fantasy analysts, they'd rather take Eckler because he catches so many passes, and they believe this is the year that he becomes a goal line back, but I just don't see it.
And Eckler's a smaller back. He's more prone to getting banged up. He was banged up last year. The Chargers have the young running back they drafted last season who they utilized early in the year. Josh Kelly.
They drafted Larry Roundtree.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry, listen, I know the carries are a lot, right? 378 is an astronomical number, 303 the year before. But he's a monster of a human being, right? Like he doesn't get hit. He hits. He delivers the contact. And that, to me, it's just a different style of play. And it's a style of play that I just think he'll be able. I'm not worried where, 19 receptions for 114 yards. Doesn't matter if you're running for 1,800 yards and 15 touchdowns. I'm not worried about the receptions
for the whole way, actually.
Right. It's just Austin. And to me, that is a complete apple and oranges. Anybody who wants Austin Eckler over Derrick Henry, they're playing for third place. I mean, that's just the bottom line, in my opinion. Scott, one more Tennessee Titan player I want to ask you about now. Does this trade of Julio Jones, I'm clapping my hands a lot today. I don't know why. I'm just excited to be on with you. Is Tannehill now a top 12 quarterback? Are we drafting Tannehill as our number one? Like, is this Tennessee offense you and I have done it, an all-in situation?
Hello?
You waving. Hello.
Hello. Ryan Tannehill finished quarterback 7 last year. He was a QB1.
Right, but on draft day, he's not respected as that.
No, he isn't, and this will boost him up more. I have him ranked number 12 right now. I had him number 13. I just bumped him up 1. Tannehill is solid and sometimes explosive. He's not sexy. It'll still be a lot of running game, for Tennessee, but you can win with Ryan Tannehill in a fantasy league, and you could last year. And now he gets Julio Jones. It's not a major boost. Again, I talked about it in my article. Hot take that Ryan Tannehill is now QB1. Hello, he was 1 last year. Yeah. So I think in your mind you can be more comfortable with drafting Ryan Tannehill and over Matt Ryan.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now let's flip to Atlanta. A lot of people now are tripping over themselves, professing everlasting love for Calvin Ridley. Okay. Now, Calvin Ridley did have a minor surgery, had some loose particles cleaned out of his foot. They expect him healthy for training camp. I'm not worried about OTAs. Talk to me when training camp opens. If he's still not practicing, then maybe I'll have an elevated level of concern. But Calvin Ridley, people are talking about him as a top 5 wide receiver now based on the numbers he put up when Julio Jones wasn't in the offense last year. Kyle Pitts is there. Matt Ryan is there. Not much of a running game in Atlanta. Are you buying in to Calvin Ridley now as in that, rarefied air of wide receivers with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill and in that top 5 Stephon Diggs category?
I already had him top 5 even before this trade. So,
yeah, huh?
This team's going to continue to throw the ball a lot. Matt Ryan can still sling it. And he established himself, even with Julio when he was there, as the number 1 touchdown maker in that offense. And it just gets better with Julio gone because you can't rely on Kyle Pitts to replace Julio right away as a rookie. He's obviously their number 1 target. He's unstoppable, when they want to score. To me, Ridley's top 5.
All right, here we go. Last season, he had 90 receptions. Higher or lower than last season for Calvin Ridley?
I'll say 5 less.
5 less, so 85. Last season, he had 1,374 receiving yards, more or less.
Less, probably about 1,200.
Last season, he had 9 touchdowns, more or less.
I'll say less, 8.
Wow. So okay, so you're going to probably want to come over to my place right now and smack at me, but you have him top 5, yet you have his receptions, yardage, and touchdowns all going down from last year.
That's a baseline. That's not his ceiling.
How many? 1,500-yard receiving ceiling?
1,400-yard, 12 touchdown ceiling.
The one I disagree with you is the receptions. I'm going to give him 110, 115 receptions. There's no running game in Atlanta, Scott. There's none.
Mike Davis is better than you think.
Excellent pass catcher, but I'm not expecting 15 to 20 carries. Decent runner. I love him as a pass catcher.
I wouldn't say there's no running game there.
I would say the Atlanta running game will be the swing pass to Mike Davis.
I think
that's going to be their version of a running
runner than you're giving him credit for.
All right. But I still think Calvin Ridley is the centerpiece of that offense.
I may have undershot it on the projections, actually.
Yeah, think about that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because, okay, so let's...
I just feel he's so consistent at a high level from week to week that, let me revise that as we on the go here to 90, 1,300, and 10.
I want double-digit touchdowns there from Ridley.
Yeah.
If he's going to be the guy, that ball is going to be in his hands, or they're going to try to get the ball in his hands. Last season, he had 143 targets. I'm giving him over 150 this year as well. Now, one last question here about Atlanta. Well, two more players. Let's go Kyle Pitts, because you mentioned him. I've seen in mock drafts, I saw on the SiriusXM too early mock draft, Kyle Pitts is going as a top 5 tight end. Scott, and listen, I don't want to go Lenny Melnick on us here, but he's a rookie. Are you as all in on the Kyle Pitts hype as a rookie this year?
I have him 4th.
Really? Who's your top? So Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller, and then you have
Kittle,
and then Pitts.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I know he's a rookie, but the front office has cleared the way for him to play a major role already. He's not just any rookie, but, comparison to Travis Kelce already. Here's the thing. The position is so thin and devoid of consistent production that even as he hits those rookie bumps, he's still going to be better than a lot of others.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Mark Andrews is there. There are other players there, but I understand that number 4, it's the upside pick, right? I mean, if he is truly the next Travis Kelce, you walk away and you're thrilled with Pitts at 4. Matt Ryan, is he going to be a useful fantasy quarterback this season with Julio out of town?
I have him 14th.
Really? I thought that would be lower.
I think he's still a very good fantasy quarterback. He's not quite what he was, but he could still throw for well over 4,000 yards and over 25 touchdowns. I would not be unhappy if I waited till the deal. I usually don't do this, but for people who wait till the 11th, 12th round to get the quarterback and they get Ryan, I think they'll be okay. I like him a lot in the super flex in a 2-quarterback league. He's not an ideal starter to me because I think he kind of lacks the upside that he used to, but he's not a bad fantasy quarterback either.
Right. I guess you'd say there's no surprise from Matt Ryan when you say the word upside. He is what he is at this point. He's a very good. Yeah, he's a very, very good NFL quarterback. Any fantasy value in Russell Gage sliding into potentially Julio Jones spots? He was a nice waiver wire ad the last couple of seasons.
The yardage numbers weren't that impressive. He only averaged just under 11 yards a catch. I believe it was about 10.7 yards per catch. He's more of a chain mover and not a big play guy, and will have to prove that he's deserving of that starting spot. We're going deep sleeper. I'm going to keep my eye on Olamide Zaccheaus because he's a real field stretcher, and I'm very interested to see what he can do. I do have Gage ranked 35th at wide receiver.
Okay. All right. So he's right there on the fringe of a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. So somebody to eye late on draft day. All right, everybody. When we return from our halftime break, we're going to take a look at some of the RotoBaller rankings, an early look at the RotoBaller rankings for the 2021 fantasy season. We're going to talk quarterbacks. I got some questions for Scott about what he did last year and how he pivots this year. We'll break down the quarterback position going forward. Stay right here. This is the King and Pocket Aces on RotoBaller Radio. Welcome back, everybody, to King Pocket Aces show. Second half of all the action, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed our Julio Jones fallout breakdown. But now, Scott, it's time as we're knocking on the door of draft season to take a look at the quarterback position today. And it's funny. I love preparing the outline because I'm like, man, I want to ask Scott this. I want to ask Scott that. So I got a few things I want to ask you. But let's start with, I think, the biggest newsmaker at the quarterback position this offseason, and that's Aaron Rodgers. My question for you, let's say today we get off this show and we decide to jump into best ball. Are you running scared right now in a best ball format of Aaron Rodgers, currently holding out of OTAs, doesn't want to be in Green Bay, don't know how this whole thing is going to shake out? Is Aaron Rodgers in a best ball format somebody you're avoiding because of all the uncertainty?
First off, the king never runs scared. So I'll rephrase that. Am I avoiding?
The king runs to the fear, not away from the fear.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Frankie Fear, you know. But if it comes down to a tight decision between him and another quarterback, obviously I'm going the other way. But the odds of Aaron Rodgers retiring to me are very long indeed. And I think he'll play at some point. We're throwing darts. We're guessing how this is going to turn.
Yeah.
So, but, there's a lot more guesswork involved in earlier best ball drafts than others. So it depends on how much I'm playing for. If I'm in a $5, $20 best ball, I'll still take them. If I'm playing for $100 or more, I'd probably avoid him. So it depends. Go to rotoballer.ffpc, rotoballer.com/FFPC. Get involved in the draft right now. But if I'm doing one of those $5 or $10 ones, I'll take a shot on Rodgers. And it depends on where he falls in any draft. I can't give a blanket answer to that.
Yeah.
It depends on where I am in the draft. But, I'm probably not going to take him in my top 8 quarterbacks.
If training camp starts, right? Training camp's open, and Aaron Rodgers is still sitting home hoping to become the host of Jeopardy. Does he come off your draft board? Or again, is it hey, it's round 18, it's my last pick, I'm a fool for not taking Aaron Rodgers here?
I don't think it'll last that long, but let's right now, Deshaun Watson, one early draft that I did, I took him in the 13th round.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I could be looking at a QB1 playing at me for some point. So you start to think about it in, say, the 11th, 12th round.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the other player who's had a tough offseason, and that's Deshaun Watson. Me personally, and this is just my completely my own opinion, I don't expect Deshaun Watson to play quarterback for the Houston Texans ever again. I just don't. I think Tyrod Taylor was brought there for a reason, to bridge the gap to the next guy. Deshaun Watson's off the field issues, piggybacking his already previous trade demands. Reports came out the other day that he wants to go to Denver. Well, newsflash, Denver's also flirting with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Deshaun Watson is, I think, a bigger risk draft pick than Aaron Rodgers because, even if Deshaun Watson shows up to play somewhere, the NFL could drop an 8-game suspension on him at any moment. So my question for you is, is Deshaun Watson another player who's just not worth the unknown? Or again, you mentioned it, so maybe you already answered it, right? 13th round, why the heck not?
Yeah, because we can't predict these things. You never know how the league's going to act. You never know how Aaron Rodgers' his situation, what it's going to take to turn it around. People tried to predict with Ezekiel Elliott a few years ago how long he was going to be suspended. Nobody knows for sure how the league rules on these things, how the legal process is going to play out. So right now you have to take these guys as long shots and take them in somewhere to the 11th, 13th round. And if they end up being a wasted draft pick, you cut them.
If Aaron Rodgers ends up in Denver, does that potentially improve his draft value with that young wide receiver core?
How much can we improve his wide receiver draft value? If I knew Aaron Rodgers was going to play and he was in camp for the Packers, he'd be a top 5 fantasy quarterback
Okay.
So he'd be the same thing. Instead of having Devontae Adams hog everything, he's got a more diverse crew. He doesn't have an Adams, but he's got a Cortland Sutton. He's got a Jerry Jeudy. He's got a Noah Fant. So to me, he'd still be top 5, 6 fantasy quarterback. As long as Aaron Rodgers plays, he's top 5, top 6.
No That's it. Okay. Okay. Well, now let's get into the rankings over at rotoballer.com. And guys, don't forget, I said it at the start, sign up, get that premium package, get the rankings. You'll get Scott's rankings, all the great content, our draft guide. So make sure you get involved there. Use the promo code KING, save some money courtesy of Scott's. Use the promo code ACES. Use for my promo code, whichever you prefer. Either way, sign up for that NFL premium package and save yourself a little bit of money. Now, Scott, this time last year, you and I had some fun. We did some drafts together. And I remember questioning you, whether it was on podcasts or radios. You took Lamar Jackson as a first-round pick. Okay? Had a good season. Didn't live up to first-round status. Let's just be honest about that.
I can admit it.
You can admit it. You rolled the dice. And I remember your argument. He's giving you elite level running back numbers along with the ability to throw the ball. Was essentially your argument. And it made sense. So my question for you is, right, on the RotoBaller rankings, actually, rotoballer.com has Lamar Jackson ranked as the 4th overall quarterback at this moment heading into 2021. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray is the top 3. How are you back to the normal thought process? I want to say normal, the more common thought process of quarterbacks now, where you're going to sit back and wait to that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round to take your quarterback? Or are you still willing to be the first guy to take the quarterback off the board and grab a Pat Mahomes or whoever you feel is the QB1?
Yeah, I'm willing to wait. Jackson disappointed me as a passer. That's why I'm a little bit more reserved on Jalen Hurts than other people are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have Hurts inside my top 10. I'm going to wait.
A lot of people do, Scott.
I know, but again, it's a case of people loving upside and pushing the guy too high up the board. I can tell you why I'm down on Hurts in another conversation. I just don't like him as much as everybody else. But, I'm probably going to wait till the 6th or 7th round. I'm going to go back to my old standard way of, taking 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and maybe a tight end in the first 6 rounds. Quarterback, I'll start thinking in the 6th round. If I end up with a Russell Wilson, if I end up with Justin Herbert, if I end up with Matthew Stafford, I'm very happy. I know people love running quarterbacks, but I think Stafford's going to have a superb season. I love what I saw out of Herbert, etc. Running quarterbacks are not the only way to win, and sometimes they get overrated when they're not as accomplished as passers.
No, I agree with that.
So I thought Jackson last year was going to continue to elevate himself as a passer, and it didn't happen.
Right. No, that's and part of that could be because of the wide receiver play wasn't outstanding, but nonetheless, Mark Andrews took a step back along with Lamar Jackson. Whole slew of reasons there. Now, Scott,
I didn't expect it. I didn't expect as many touchdowns as he did 2 years ago, but I expect him to be more steady overall.
Okay. Well, when you look at the top of the RotoBaller rankings, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson at 4. You mentioned Aaron Rodgers in the top 5, and that's exactly where he is, 5. Dak Prescott 6, and then your guy. So this is really where you're kind of sitting potentially, is outside the top 5 in that 7, 8, 9 range, where you see Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, and Matthew Stafford. And I agree with you. Okay, they might Russell Wilson a little bit of running, but Herbert, Matthew Stafford, they're going to stand there and sling it. And that's kind of your area of where you're taking a QB is in that 7, 8, 9 range. But nonetheless, Jalen Hurts sits at number 10 in the RotoBaller rankings. Some people on Twitter, they love Jalen Hurts. They're tripping over himself, even though the wide receiver core is still an unknown and everything else about that Eagle offense. So why is it that Jalen Hurts, although in the top 10 here, is not somebody you view as a top 10 quarterback?
I have him outside my top 10 because, look, I realize that he had 200-300-yard games and 100-yard rushing games down the stretch. but he's not going to surprise anybody or sneak up on anybody this year. It's a different kind of approach when you are the starting quarterback right out of the gate and the opposing defensive coordinators, especially when you're in division, have studied a lot of film on you. It's different type of challenge to start the season as a number one guy. And I think there's going to be a learning curve for him. Plus, his playmaking crew is going to take time to develop. Yeah. Devonta Smith has the talent to be a number one wide receiver in the NFL, but it's a lot to ask of a rookie to be the number one right away. And the rest of the receiving crew is not that impressive. And if the passing game, they can't consistently throw the ball, which I'm kind of concerned about, then Jalen Hurts becomes easier to defend as a scrambler. So I think a lot of people that I respect say, you want that running quarterback more than anything else. Well, I think the rushing upside could be a little bit limited more than people think, because I think I have to be sold and see it that he's going to be a consistently above average passer on a week-to-week basis. I don't think the Eagles are quite convinced themselves of that. I think he's still a work in progress, whereas a lot of people are looking just down the stretch run and deciding that's what he's going to be.
So you say slide Jalen Hurts down, and earlier in the show, in the first half, you talked about Ryan Tannehill, and we mentioned how underappreciated he is. He finished QB7 last year. You had him as a QB1, currently sitting as QB13 on the RotoBaller rankings. He's sitting behind Jalen Hurts, Tom Brady, and Joe Burrow. Do you have Ryan Tannehill above those three quarterbacks?
I have him right behind at number 12. I have Stafford at number 9. I have Burrow at 10, Hurts at 11, and Tannehill at 12. And I have Brady. I have Brady at 13.
Okay, so no fear
quarterbacks
of Burrow's. No, I was going to say that next. So Mike, that you're putting Burrow in there. No concern with the knee coming back. They didn't improve the offensive line in Cincinnati.
They actually did improve the offensive line. In fact, Pro Football Focus said it was the 4th most improved offensive line of the offseason. Okay. I'm watching it right now. He sits at number 10. He's not locked. I want to see how things progress during camp, but I haven't heard any news of any setbacks, so I'm pretty confident. Joe Burrow, when he was injured, was fantasy quarterback number 9 last year. And he's got a very deep receiving crew. And
very deep.
Throw a lot. He got hit a lot behind that offensive line, but the defense also forced him to throw a lot. And even when he got hit, he was still putting up numbers. So if I know in July and August that Joe Burrow is fine, I think he's a breakthrough player.
So doesn't it make sense? And we say this all the time. It's a repetitive conversation. But if you have guys like Burrow and Tannehill sitting right at the fringe of the top 12, at the end of the top 12, doesn't it make sense to just sit back and grab one of those guys? You're already now looking at probably round 9, round 10. Why? I mean, everybody loves Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen. They're elite level players. But the upside of a Joe Burrow in year 2 healthy at QB, whatever it is, 10, 11, 12, wherever you're personally ranking him, to get him where you're getting him and being able to stack running backs, wide receivers, and skill positions earlier in the draft, why would anybody take a quarterback earlier than that? You know what I mean, Scott?
Because, and we'll talk about experienced players here, people just love having a Mahomes and Allen, somebody like that who can dominate the position. They want to have one of the best in the position. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'd like to be in the 6th, 7th, and get Herbert, get Russell Wilson, get Matthew Stafford, maybe in the 8th. I'm okay with waiting. At some point, though, when I get to the point where I go with the flow of the draft, I'd like to get somebody in my top 10. And Wilson will probably go in the 7th. Stafford will probably go in the 9th. And Burrow will probably go in the 10th. And Herbert might last till the 7th too. I ideally like to get Herbert and Wilson because I have Herbert ranked 5th. And if I can get my 5th overall quarterback in the 7th round, that speaks to what you talk about. Why draft early at the position?
Mm-hmm. No, I
Superflex is obviously different.
Different conversation,
Mahomes
right?
Is Mahomes is the number 1 overall player, period.
Right. Yes. Well, I'll say this too, and we've talked about this in the past as well. The only time I will pivot and take that Patrick Mahomes in round 3 is if I walk away with Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill in round 1, because then it becomes fun, right? Then your fantasy team rolling with the Chiefs offense. That's a fun Sunday afternoon watching that.
Yeah, I did that a few years ago. It was so much fun, winning 2 leagues like that.
Yeah,
I'm okay with doing because that's one of the connections that I would absolutely love to have, and you could make a case for Diggs and Josh Allen too.
You could. Yep, absolutely. Where, so that's always fun. That's the situation when you make that move and you're sitting in a draft, whether online or it's even more fun if you're still doing the old-fashioned in-person draft. And when you pop that Tyreek Hill in round 1 and that Patrick Mahomes in round 3, and every person in that room turns their head in your direction, and they collectively realize, oh man, look what just happened. And you just know that when Kansas City goes off, you're just like a slot machine. The coins are just going to start flying out when they have that moment. That's a fun situation.
You could say, Scott, that just happened.
Let's talk Matthew Stafford, because this was a big move. And Matthew Stafford gets out of Detroit with the Rams now, the McVay offense, Cooper Kupp, healthy, dealt with a knee last year, Cam Akers, Robert Woods, and that offense. Threw for over 4,000 yards last year on that Detroit team that was really missing their wide receivers. Kenny Golladay banged up most of the season. But some interesting numbers about Matthew Stafford. He's only thrown for over 30 touchdowns twice in his career, okay? One was in 2011 when he was 23. He threw for 41. And in 2015, he threw for 32. He's never, other than that, he's never exceeded 30 touchdown passes. Okay, the yardage has always been there. He's over 4,000 yards more times than he's not. But as good as he's been, people have always expected, I think, more. And now with the Rams, people are really expecting more. Is it fair for that assessment to be made on Matthew Stafford now with this Ram offense that can we finally get that 35 touchdown, 4,500 yard passing season out of Matt Stafford?
I don't know if the expectations are quite there. I think people are seeing him for what he used to be, and I like him a little better because he's going to the best coaching environment that he ever did, and he's got the deepest receiving crew that he ever did. When you look at 1 to 3, and maybe 1 to 4 there.
Deshaun Jackson is there if he can stay on the field. A couple of rookies.
I have him ranked as 9th. I don't think he's going to be as spectacular as some other, but I think he's going to be very good. He'll probably hit the ceiling of what we've seen in the past.
Right. So right around 30 touchdowns, a little over, a little less in that.
Yeah, maybe like 32 touchdowns, 4,400 yards. And that's very good.
It's a good season. And somebody would say, so to play counter argument, well, I want Jalen Hurts because he's going to run for 700 yards. Well, to me, I kind of agree with you. I've never seen Jalen Hurts run for 700-800 yards at the professional level, right, Scott? So I'll take what I think is the safe floor that is Matthew Stafford with the Rams, no?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are going to point to the rushing quarterback. You'll probably get those 6 points for rushing touchdowns in leagues where you get just 4, and that gives them an advantage. And I'm not saying you can't do it, but like I pointed out, prove it to me that you can be that kind of guy. And if you rush for 700 yards, well, how do I know what he's going to throw for? Because I go back to Michael Vick. Michael Vick was an overrated fantasy quarterback because he was a very erratic passer. He would have a few weeks where he'd explode, but then he's had some mediocre weeks, and you can never rely on Michael Vick to take you to a fantasy championship. And until I see Jalen Hurts do it otherwise, we've seen a lot of running quarterbacks like that too. Lamar Jackson was a disappointment. How often have we seen a running quarterback have the season like Lamar Jackson had a few years ago? The best quarterback in fantasy football is not a heavy runner.
Right.
Everybody talks about rushing quarterback. Josh Allen's a heavy runner. Dak Prescott, who's my third, he's not a heavy runner. He can run.
He can move if he needs to.
But he's more like, in terms of production, like a younger Russell Wilson. Kyler Murray runs, but his throwing is inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of people just say by default, I want that rushing quarterback. I think I take every quarterback on a case-by-case basis. How good of the passer is the rusher?
Fair enough. Kyler Murray, listen, Arizona's put an offense around Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has to take the next step this year. When you look at the wide receiver pieces they brought in, veteran, still like a DeAndre Hopkins in their prime, AJ Green, who veteran, maybe past his prime, but still somebody, if he's healthy, can make a play or two. So it's going to be interesting to see what Kyler Murray ends up producing.
He has to become better at the high percentage passes to be a more consistent fantasy quarterback.
Right. Let's jump outside the top 12, though, now, Scott. Okay. Now we're talking about the Matt Ryans, the Kirk Cousins, the Baker Mayfields, even the Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. Are there quarterbacks? Is there anybody maybe that stands out, or a couple of players who stand out in your mind that you could say, you know what? I'm waiting to round 14 to take my quarterback.
I'm going to just that.
Well, there may be, is there a quarterback that late that you could say, yeah, you can win with Baker Mayfield, or you can win with Matt Ryan, whomever it may be, who's going to be available even that late in the draft?
You can win with Matt Ryan. You might be able to win with Baker Mayfield. Solid, sometimes spectacular. After that, though, I think if you go outside of the top 14 or so, it's hard to identify a starting quarterback in fantasy you'll be comfortable with. I will say this, though. You got to watch some of the rookies. I feel like Justin Fields is, out of all the quarterbacks other than Lawrence, is just the best pure passer, and he could really surprise. And it wouldn't shock me to see Sam Darnold all of a sudden challenged to become a good fantasy starter. The Jets never built anything good around him talent-wise. When he was with them, he walks into the totally different situation with the Panthers. Yeah. He's got McCaffrey supporting him as a runner and receiver. He's got DJ Moore coming off of 2 1,100-yard seasons. He's got Robbie Anderson, 15 yards per catch in the 2 years that he played with him. And he's got the rookie, too. So it wouldn't surprise me if a change of scenery, and we've seen it happen with Ryan Tannehill, get away from Adam Gase, that Sam Darnold's a sleeper. So you got to know these also if you're playing in super. So
are you willing
if
to
you're playing in superflex leagues? You're okay with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think you like Darnold. I think you like Fields.
What about Daniel Jones? The Giants have added to that offense as well. Barkley back. They brought in Kenny Galladay. They drafted Kadarius Toney. You still have Shepard, Ingram. There's still pieces there. Galladay obviously being the big addition. Daniel Jones, can he show more of what he showed his rookie season and less of what he showed last season?
To me, Daniel Jones is still enigmatic. And how much support will he get from the running game if Barkley can't stay healthy? I still like Jones for upside, but I got to be sold on it. I don't want him at all in a one quarterback league, but in a super flex, I think I'd be okay with him as my number 2.
Daniel Jones or Tua?
Daniel Jones. Really? I need to be convinced that Tua is more of a downfield thrower and less of a game manager.
Wow. I was 100% certain you were going to say Tua, huh? Not in on Tua?
Not as a fantasy guy. I think he'll be a better NFL quarterback than a fantasy quarterback. And I think there's a lot of meshing that needs. I don't think there's going to be a terrific offense. I think the Miami Dolphins are a good team. I like them real in the NFL better than fantasy football. I think Devontae Parker's super underrated. But, Gesicki's been a disappointment. The running game is just okay. I see this team winning lower scoring football games. I love their defense. I think their defense is a top 5 fantasy defense, and it's underrated.
You haven't mentioned Ben Roethlisberger, who sits at number 21 on the rankings. They added a running back, Najee Harris, and they have all their wide receivers back, right? Juju re-signed, Chase Claypool. So the pieces of Deontay Johnson, the pieces are still there for Ben. No love though, huh?
He's going to be a distributor, and it's a type of offense now where the receivers do the work after the catch. So he may be respectable in a super flex, but you don't want any part of him in a standard 1 quarterback league.
Any interest in the Saints quarterback situation? Winston, Taysom
I
Hill.
think once it becomes clear who's going to win the job, and I think it's going to be Winston, who'll have better run support and running back support than ever before. I think I'm going to bump Winston closer up to my top 14.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen the good and the bad from Jameis Winston, but he could throw it. And with Kamara and with Michael Thomas there, if Winston wins the job, are you concerned if putting Winston that high, say in your top 15 or top 14, even though there will still be packages for Taysom Hill?
Not really. And if Hill wins the job, he's got the rushing skill and he's a decent thrower. So I think I would actually rank Hill a little bit higher if he won the job, but I expect Winston to win the job.
Who's the Denver Broncos quarterback on week 1?
Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, huh? You think?
Yeah.
Assuming Rodgers stays in Green Bay.
I don't think Rodgers goes anywhere. It's just a prediction. It could be way off because I said we don't know. And I think the Texans are going to have trouble trading him.
Interesting. So Bridgewater beats out Drew Lock. Who's the 49ers quarterback week 1?
Jimmy Garoppolo. Trey Lance is kind of raw.
Who's the 49ers quarterback week 8? Still
Trey
Jimmy
Lance.
G?
Garoppolo will be injured, unfortunately.
Texans quarterback for the majority of the season, Tyrod Taylor?
Yes, if he stays healthy.
Interesting. Patriots quarterback, Cam Newton or Mac Jones?
Cam Newton.
Whole season, or does Mac Jones take over?
I don't think Mac Jones takes over. I don't think he'll be ready.
You think it's Cam Newton all season?
Yeah.
I could
be wrong on that.
Any fantasy expectations for Zach Wilson of the Jets?
I like him okay as a super flex, but it's going to be a stiff learning curve for him. So I'll probably be starting defenses against him early in his career. I'm not saying I eventually don't like the kid, but fantasy wise, I want Lawrence or Fields, and that's probably it.
So would you say is it safe to say that on draft day, Lawrence and Fields should be the only 2 rookie quarterbacks drafted in a redraft?
Those are the only ones I will consider.
Yeah, I agree with you. Lance, I won't. Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. Dynasty leagues, keeper leagues, things like that, whatever, have your conversation. But in a redraft, and there's no guarantee, right, Scott, that Zach, who starts for the Bears week 1?
Andy Dalton, but by week 3, it's Fields.
Week 3, okay.
Because I'm not convinced Andy Dalton could be any better than Trubisky was. He was awful with Dallas last year, and he had weapons.
Awful. And if you remember, people fell in love with Andy Dalton because of those pieces in Dallas. Doesn't matter the pieces if you can't make the pass, and that's what Andy Dalton
We'll no longer
showed.
hear that narrative that the reason why the Bengals didn't win a playoff game, it wasn't any of Dalton's fault.
There's definitely some fault that unfortunately fell Andy Dalton's way. Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Any other quarterbacks that I miss, Scott? Did I miss anybody that you love heading into the season?
Miss anybody that I love heading?
Ryan Fitzpatrick. You like Ryan Fitzpatrick in Washington?
No.
I
think people get overhyped about Fitzpatrick because they don't expect a lot out of him, and then when he does more than they expected, they get all hyped about him. Yeah, he's an erratic journeyman. What is this, like his 45th team?
Well, Ryan Fitzpatrick's fantasy season will, go the same way it does every year. He'll be on the waiver wire. He'll throw a 300-yard game. He'll get added. People will fall in love. And then he'll throw a 4-interception game, and he'll be back on the waiver wire. Isn't that what's happened every year?
NFL teams can't win with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and neither can fantasy teams.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how we say anything else. Scott just said it there, folks. Guys, don't forget, head over to rotoballer.com. Like we've said, check it all out. DFS, season-long players, football, baseball, NASCAR, MMA, esports, sports betting, you name it. Rotoballer.com has it for you. Make sure you check out all the content right here on the Rotoballer YouTube channel as well. Follow Scott on Twitter at Scott E. The King. Follow me on Twitter at Aniano Fantasy. Scott, this has been a ton of fun. Our next show, we'll break down the latest news and we'll take a look, what do you say, at the running back position?
Sure.
Sounds good, guys. We're here each and every week. The King and Pocket Aces Fantasy Show brought to you by rotoballer.com. Guys, stay smart, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one, folks.